A shelter created to house migrant children in Florida is pushing back against the governor's crackdown on illegal immigration, which included shutting these shelters down. It's an immigration battle Contact 5's Katie LaGrone was first to break a year ago. Tonight, she's back breaking all the new details about the latest legal efforts to combat the governor's orders, and it's now leaving the state's top child welfare agency on the defensive.
1 year after we were first to reveal Governor DeSantis' push to shut down shelters in Florida that care for unaccompanied migrant children, we've discovered one of these shelters is aggressively fighting back. In this complaint filed with the state's Division of Administrative Hearings, Miami faith-based shelter His House accuses Florida's Department of Children and Families of overreaching its power to enact and enforce an invalid rule that unlawfully assumed emergency powers when there was no real emergency.
It all stems from this, a newly enacted DCF rule prohibiting the agency from renewing the licenses of shelters federally funded to care for migrant children, unless the federal government agrees to start sharing more detail about who it's letting in.
This shelter in Miami is one of 17 Florida-based shelters contracted by the feds to temporarily care for these migrant kids who arrive without a legal guardian before they're reunited with family here. It's also the state's largest shelter of its kind, helping more than 20,000 migrant children since it opened in 1996, according to the complaint. But after a quarter of a century operating here, earlier this year, DCF denied the shelter its license because of this new rule.
They are farming out people.
Born out of the governor's crackdown on illegal immigration, what he dubbed Biden's border crisis. The shelter claims its license denial is the result of political propaganda by a governor who's, quote, aimed at bolstering his political bona fides so he can run for president in 2024.
I think this complaint illustrates just how misdirected and politically motivated decisions by the governor have been when it comes to immigration.
Democratic Representative Anna Escamani of Orlando is a longtime immigrant advocate who has strongly opposed what she calls is the governor's anti-immigrant agenda.
And immigrants and immigrant children are being used as political pawns. And meanwhile, you have organizations, faith-based organizations like His House, who are literally doing God's work and supporting unaccompanied children.
In response to the complaint, DCF admits the Miami shelter was denied a new license because the feds haven't entered into a resettle agreement with the state. While the feds say these shelters don't need a state license to care for migrant kids, some have told us they feel stuck in the middle of carrying out their mission to help those in need and abiding by the rules of who's in charge.
We feel a little bit in limbo.
A day before this case was set to go to public testimony, it was put on hold because both parties had agreed to reach a settlement. Neither DCF or the shelter has responded to our request for comment. Both parties have until the end of the year to reach a final settlement or the case continues. I'm Katie LaGrone reporting.